Hello, everyone. Today I am going to be reviewing the third studio album by American artist Katy Perry. This album is titled Prism, and it was released on October 13th, 2013, October 22nd in the United States. This is her third album following the hugely successful Teenage Dream, which was the consummate pop album, especially for the 2010s. It had just everything that you could throw into a popular Billboard-topping pop record. So Prism was a tall order to be a follow-up, but I think she did a wonderful job. I have reviewed her latest album, Witness, on this channel, and I feel Prism succeeds where Witness doesn't, and that's what makes Prism an album that I can actually sink my teeth into as a full record. I feel like with Katy, she has a lot of hit or miss moments on a lot of her other albums, but Prism has the most hits. There's a lot of songs that I wish had become singles. The biggest thing I lament is that I think her team chose a lot of the wrong songs to be singles. Instead of choosing songs like Walking on Air or Legendary Lovers, they chose songs like This Is How We Do and Dark Horse. The latter was quite successful, the former song not so much. This album was crafted with her usual team of hitmakers. However, it's worth noting that it was originally going to be a much darker album as she was coming off of her breakup and divorce from Russell Brand. She was in a very dark place, and she cites a trip she took to Madagascar and also a lot of reading Eckhart Tolle, a lot of reading about the moment, about the future, about empowerment, about positivity, all of these things that she was using to fuel herself into a sort of rebirth, so to speak, of a much lighter record than what was originally started back in 2012. The first song she wrote for this album is the closing track on the standard edition, By the Grace of God, one of the most heart-wrenching ballads and most honest we've seen Katy write. It's not glossed over in pop euphoric lyricism. It's very real. I mean, I thank my sister for keeping my head above the water when the truth was like swallowing sand. Every morning there is no more morning. This is a song about overcoming suicide, about realizing I got to the lowest point, and by the grace of God, again, she's not explicitly throwing religion down your throat, but she's just saying, by the goodness of love and the life that I share with all these people around me, particularly her family, they helped lift her up out of her darkest moment. And so it's a very sparse but very poignant and important track on this record, and one that I definitely think solidifies what this album is all really about. Because otherwise it is a little bit all over the place. We do have a much airier and lighter record than the darker, themes would suggest. Dark Horse is a little bit more murky and dark. But the album opener, Roar, is basically setting the tone. Roar is this anthemic, don't underestimate me, powerhouse of a song. It's driven a lot of comparison with Sarah Bareilles' song Brave, which came out the same year. They do sound very similar. However, Roar was written probably around the same time, if not before Brave came out, so they would never have heard each other when they were being made. It's just a coincidence. I do truly believe that. You can definitely hear the borderline cliches that Katy adopts in some of her lyrics to explore, self-empowerment. But I don't have a problem with that. The music video is really fun, set in a jungle, shows her becoming a warrior, living on by herself in the woods with this very cute little monkey and then the elephants. Very high budget music video. I remember when it came out, it was quite something to watch. And Roar did really well commercially. Now, for me, the song is a little bit vanilla, and it doesn't necessarily feel like that exciting after a few listens, so it got very repetitive after a while, and I feel like the song kind of collapses under its own kind of hype after a while, so that's just how the nature of some of these overplayed songs. It's usually not the most interesting song off of the record. Legendary Lovers should have been a single. This has a lot of Eastern, particularly Bhangra influence, speaking about a spiritual love or romance, but linking it to all of these religious figures or all these iconographic figures like Cleopatra or Juliet. I feel my lotus bloom come closer. I want your energy. I want your aura. You are my destiny, my mantra. It does feel a little bit like she's just trying to toy with all these Eastern Buddhist concepts and make a very fun song out of it. But I don't find it to be, like I said, too cliche, Katy Perry is definitely a more vanilla artist, but that's not necessarily that doesn't detract from the fact that some of these songs sound really good. It is unfortunate to lament that, yes, Dr. Luke, as he always is all over this album as a producer. But she does work with Max Martin and Stargate as well, quite a bit. And Greg Kurstin, a songwriter, she works with quite a lot, along with Bonnie McKee. So you can definitely hear their formula in there a little bit, along with Klaus Auland, who is a phenomenal Swedish writer and producer. So she gets a lot of great hits from him, including Walking on Air. Birthday is it's a fun song. It's very Mariah Carey. I mean, Katy herself, she described the song as being what Mariah would have put on her first album. She wanted a disco song. It's very cute. The music video, again, this is another song. Why was it a single? There are so much better songs on this record. It's a song celebrating a birthday. It's cute, and it's definitely more filler material, but it does have an amazing chorus. It's pop perfection to a T, and that does make it radio friendly enough to be considered a hit for sure. But I just don't necessarily think, she's already done Last Friday Night. There's a lot of parallels between Last Friday Night's sort of sound with Birthday, and I feel like that pop formula has been played out a little bit, but at the same time, nothing again feels like it's beaten to death on this record. If Katy made Prism again, then it would probably feel beaten to death. She could only make this kind of album once, and I don't lament the fact that, it's a little cheesy at times. Walking on Air is my favorite song on this record. It is just infectious, it's undeniable, but it is unfortunately the song that was the most slept on off of this record. It was inspired by CeCe Peniston and Crystal Waters, and it is a deep house song with tons of Eurodance influence. You can't almost recognize Katy's lower register vocals as she kind of ad-libs throughout the song and sings the beginning opener that's spurred out, Tonight I'm Walking on Air. And although it's definitely a modern EDM song, it bridges 70s disco so beautifully with 90s house to make a wonderful club song that could have been an amazing song for a single and the music video. Unconditionally is the most saccharine song on this record, and I think it might be a bit the most cheesy because of it. She states it as being her favorite song, but personally, I don't really see that much that's that endearing about it, besides, of course, the fact that it is so meaningful. But the fact that it just sort of, there's really not a lot for me to say. It's not a bad song, it's just there. Again, it was a second single to be released. I mean, there are songs that are way better, and then the singles that were chosen, it's like, what's happening here? Dark Horse, I'll admit, is catchy. It's definitely got more hip-hop influence. It's kind of the only moment that hip-hop really introduces itself into this record, as it does feature Juicy J. I'd be fine without his feature. I always am fine without rap features for the most part. The production steals the show a little bit, but I do love some dictatorial things she does with her voice, like that "Make me your Aphrodite," the way she draws out those vowel sounds. It's very classic Katy, and it's very diva, and I think she handles it very well. The music video, super over the top, as you would expect. All of these music videos, over the top. Big budget. This is Katy on the top of her game, and you know what? She's allowed to do these kinds of things. She's meant to create a spectacle and a show. And so there's a bit of a circus aspect to all of these songs, and they're also different from each other and yet unified. So this is how we do. I must admit, at first, this was an earworm. This song definitely is really catchy. It's a good blend of the 80s and modern club music with hip-hop influences, but then it becomes a bit cringy after a while. Maybe it's again, like, it's not a song that has a good shelf life. And she released a version featuring a rapper in the summer of 2014, and of course she would, because this song is begging to have a rapper featured on it. This song was produced by Max Martin and Klaus Auland, again in Sweden, so it definitely has a Swedish pop feel to it. It's very shimmery, it's very glossy, and it's quite clever, singing real bad to Mariah karaoke. International Smile, another slept-on song. Really smart, really clever, some very Daft Punk-inspired vocal breakdowns toward the end. Again, I mean, these songs are so positive and uplifting, and although there isn't a lot of spiritualism imbued in most of these songs, only towards the end do we get that. Oh, I'm not, again, hating the fact that some of these songs are actually a little bit more materialistic or a little bit less revelatory of her personality than I would have thought they would have been, giving the title and record themes. But I don't know. Again, like, maybe that's just not what I'm really looking to Katy Perry for. There's other artists I look to that for more so. Ghost is going into a little bit more familiar territory with her. It's a little bit more of a mid-tempo ballad where she's speaking about something that is very relatable to all of us. Phenomenon of ghosting. You were all over me one minute and then the next you were gone. You vanished like vapor. There's just an echo where your heart used to be. Now I see it clearly. Unfortunately, we all go through this, and that sort of jaded realization of, I know what I needed to do and I'll be okay. But I'm not going to fall for this again. I'm wiser now, comes across very powerfully in the song. And I think it's catchy enough to get stuck in your head, but it's not something that necessarily like screams a single. So we're finally getting to the songs that are like meant to be just album songs. Because otherwise it's like hit after hit after hit after hit. Love Me is a little bit bizarre and a little bit off-putting in that it has such an electronic production that almost wants it to be a big pop song, even though it's kind of subdued and low tempo. Love Me for me. I can see this being definitely inspired a lot by her feelings about leaving Russell Brand. I lost myself in fear of losing you. I lost my own identity, forgot that you had picked me for me. But now I don't negotiate with insecurities. They always seem to get the best of me. I found I had to love myself the way I want you to, which is very wise, and very important. That putting yourself, especially after a breakup, front and center, self-reclamation, self-rebuilding, so important if you want to have success in your next relationship, and to give yourself space to become fine-tuned with who you are again. Sometimes I wish my skin was a costume that I could just unzip and strip. But who I am is who I'm meant to be, and it's who you are in love with. So take it or leave it. The second favorite song of mine on this record is This Moment. I really do feel like Katy and Sia to some extent. Sia's only on one song on this record, but This Moment is a endearing 80s pop ballad that really gives Taylor Swift a run for her money when she's doing, the 80s stuff off of 1989. I think This Moment is it's just so infectious. It's just so well produced, and it's just so crisp and clean. And, it's not like the most poetic song, but at the same time, it's cute in its own way. I don't know how else to describe it. It's homely. It's a song that feels inviting. Can you tell me who called the race? Can anyone stay in one place? And when you get to the finish line, will you wish for more time? Or say one day you will. But one day you will find that you just can't push rewind. All we have is this moment. Tomorrow is unspoken. Yesterday is history. So why don't you be here with me? Katy talks about being inspired by reading The Power of Now. That was inspiring her to write this song, and she's very much about being in the here and now, and celebrating and not worrying about what else is happening. This song would have fit beautifully on her Teenage Dream record. Let's just point that out, because it does have that bubblegum, like, innocent pop formulaic thing that it sounds a little bit like Teenage Dream to some extent, that title song, with the same propulsing kind of rhythm that it's very like chilled in your car. It's a good song to drive to, because it just chills you out. It relaxes you, and yet at the same time, it gets you hyped about the moment, which is all it's supposed to do. And her vocals are pretty strong. I think her vocals shine a little bit more on songs like these, where there's not as much production trying to, morph her voice with all the other stuff going on around it. And we have the Sia penned song, Double Rainbow. Some beautiful synth work going on. This is the moment where you really sense the explosion of bliss that Katy's trying to get at for this record. I feel like it carries that theme beautifully. Using the analogy of a double rainbow in the sky, it's hard to find. You're one of a kind that you can only find once in a lifetime. Made to fit like a fingerprint, a code that clicks open a gold mine. They say one man's trash is another man's treasure. When I was found you, it was all pretty better. When I always read those lyrics, it was all pitter patter, like your heart. I thought of that before, but it's pretty better. I don't like that lyric so much. I like pitter patter. Secretly, I hit the lottery because you're brighter than all the northern lights. You speak to me even in my dreams. wouldn't let you go for even the highest price. Because I understand you, we see eye to eye, like a double rainbow in the sky, and wherever you go, so will I, because a double rainbow is hard to find. I'm latching myself onto you. You're one in a million. Flowery, shimmery, glossy, perfectly describes this song. You can definitely hear Sia's influence as the songwriter. Of course, Katy herself is a songwriter on all of these. She co-wrote every single song, so it's got Katy in there. I've talked about By the Grace of God, the heaviest moment on this record, and the most personal song I think she's ever put on an album. Katy used to make like very sort of gospel-inspired music when she was before she was discovered, and I feel like this song is the most, she grew up with a very religious household. This song is the most in that direction, which is why it's technically classified as Christian pop, which I think that's a little bit of a stretch. Yes, it does have the title of God in it, but she doesn't really talk about God. She just talks about perseverance and rising up from your darkest moments. Greg Wells was one of the writers and producers for this beautiful, sparse piano ballad that builds up to be something quite momentous for the record, I think. It's a song that I think would be interesting in different variations, which is why I like hearing her perform it live, because I don't necessarily believe that the version you hear on the record is the best version of this song. I feel like a more stripped back piano version with less of the EDM stuff on top of it, or a completely different arrangement with strings would be really interesting to hear. Okay, so the bonus tracks are worth noting. We have Spiritual, another highlight. It's actually in my top 5 on this record. This is her getting the most esoteric in terms of her lyricism. This is definitely like, I tried yoga today and this is how I'm making my music now. It feels like that. It's very interestingly produced. Apparently, John Mayer is a writer on this song. As you know, John Mayer and Katy had a thing going on around this time the album was being made, so you hear his influence there. It Takes Two. It's saying, hey, I'm just as much to blame as you. I keep throwing all this vitriol and hate your way, but you know what? It takes two to make something break just as much as it takes two to make something come together. So I hold some of the blame. I'm not as innocent as I once thought. And then Choose Your Battles. This is a very dark, sparring kind of song, provoking your lover. That frustration at someone. Again, I see this as a ex-Russell Brand bashing sort of song, which she needed to put out there. And it definitely has that darker pulse to it that is more emblematic of where she said the album was originally going to be heading. All in all, there's not a ton to say about an album like this, but it is definitely an album that I think needs to exist. It's cute, it's fun, it's relatable, it's vanilla, but I love vanilla. You will know if you follow this channel that I like to, one review, talk about an artist who has the most abstract everything in their videos, and it's like impossible to understand every little nuance and detail. And then I'll review an artist where it's like what I would consider junk food, but I don't necessarily think Katy's that bad for you. There are far worse junk food music out there, in my opinion. But, vanilla is my favorite flavor of ice cream. I'm sorry. I like fun and generic sometimes. And that's kind of what I look to Katy for, but at the same time, there's that down-to-earth girl next door attitude. I like that this album isn't so sexual like Teenage Dream was. This album feels a little bit more, like I said, just more relatable and a little bit like it's trying to open up to you more. Teenage Dream felt a little preposterous at points, and also, at least for me, they're both very comparable records. Witness is so different in many ways, and whether that difference pays off or not, I talk about that in my Witness review. So if any Katy Perry fans, highly recommend you watch that review of mine. Please give this a like and subscribe if you enjoyed this review. Thank you guys so much for watching. I just hit 500 subscribers. I feel so blessed because of that. I love you guys so much. I never thought I would hit that number. I know, again, like it said, might not sound like a lot, but very excited, and I hope to see you in more reviews if you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching. Peace, love, and light. Bye.
Do you ever think that we're just chasing our tails, like life is one big fast treadmill, and we pop what is prescribed if it gets us first prize?